Hey guys, today we're going to be taking a look at the Sony WM-5. This is a Walkman that was released in 1982 as a follow-up to the 1981 WM-2. This is meant as a more premium version with a metal casing. They're just about identical with a few small differences. Mainly, obviously, this one is metal. It's a little bit thinner, technically making it the smallest Walkman in the world at the time, but it was such a marginal difference. I think it was about 1 or 2 millimeters. Sony never really advertised it. They really only advertised smallest Walkman in the world again in 1983 with the WM-10. And this one is obviously the one with the sliding mechanism here to fit a cassette inside. This one though, the other big difference will be the volume knob. On the WM2 you'll have the volume knob right sticking out on the front here. Where here, because of the metal casing, they had to change the castings. Just for simplicity's sake, and it's moved in here, and you have this nice, I'll show you here, you can focus camera, there we go, you'll have that little window there that shows you what volume you're at. Now this Walkman is a very basic one. 1982, you're still early days. All you really have is the tape type selector, whether you want normal type tape or metal/chrome tape. This is really as pure of a Walkman as you can have. This, along with Walkmans like the TPS-L2, you know, the WM4s, the F1s, WM1, just those very basic early models. They hold a special place for me. You know, there's just something about them, especially with, you know, the later models that had things like Dolby, Megabass, Groove, stuff like that, graphic equalizers. They're good, but those features I find can take a little bit away from it, especially early Dolby not sounding the best, even in a fully restored Walkman. It muffles the sound a little, but when you don't even have the option to turn it on, it's just you put the cassette in and you play. That's what I really like. This one does obviously have the twin headphone jack that was carried over from the WM2 and previously the TPS-L2. Obviously just a remnant of the microphone and headphone jack of the early, you know, Pressman recorders. But that would actually stay. If I bring in my DD30 here, with this chassis, all the way up to 1989, I think this was the last Walkman to actually have it. Though some of the later DDs, something like the 11 or the 10 may have had it as well. I'm not confident on that. But this one here, we're going to do a teardown on it, and we're going to show you how to replace the belts in it, and just give you a little insight on how these guys work. On this side here, you got that DC power in, the door latch. Back here, obviously the cassette door. Nothing on the bottom except for this access hatch for the speed trimmer, potentiometer in the bottom there, though this one is plugged at the moment. And you will have a plug on the front there as well for the azimuth. But really, I mean, taking the lid off is so easy. I just take the lid off if you're going to adjust the azimuth. Dealing with these plugs, I'm not really sure the point of them. They're a pain to take out and they're a pain to put back in. And especially with the speed trimmer, you have to take it apart, take this plug out, and then reassemble it, adjust the speed, and then disassemble it just to plug it back up again. Usually it's just easiest to adjust the speed when you have it disassembled. And on this side, again, we just have that tape type selector. Now there will be technically 4 screws are needed to disassemble this down to the PCB, or take the casing off, or rather I should say. There'll be 2 here, and then 2 on the other side here. But I like to take the lid off as well. The lid is it's so easy to take off. When we actually start with that now, and I can show you here. Just because they do have issues on the metal models with the hinges snapping, just with age, you know, being beaten around, stuck in a closet for, you know, 30 years. It's thin metal, it just snaps. And it is replaceable, but I prefer to just not take the risk. It's annoying to replace, and I'd rather just not. Taking the lid off is so easy, it's just easier to do that. And I find it makes it easier just to work with in general. Where did that screw go? There we are. And then this Open the latch up there, and the lid just pops right off. I'll show you here. This is an original hinge, and then this one here is actually a replacement. You can see that plate in there compared to the other side that doesn't have that plate. When I got this, that hinge had snapped actually in shipping on its way to me. So I replaced that. You can get these, most replacement parts you can get from a guy called Mahokam, M-I-H-O-K-M, I believe, on eBay. He does great work. Hopefully he doesn't mind me mentioning him here. A little tiny YouTube channel, but great work. I think he's out of Ukraine, if I remember correctly, or Czechoslovakia, I'm not sure. But lots of parts, belts, idler tires, hinge replacements, center gears, just about everything you could need for a Walkman, or at least any of the popular models, they have there. And then we'll take out these 4 screws here. One thing you do want to be careful with, once you have the screws out, is when you're actually sliding the mechanism out of the body. This latch is spring-loaded, so you just want to make sure all that's holding it in is the casing itself. So I like to hold it down when I'm sliding the mechanism out, and then just gently release it once it's out. That way the spring doesn't go flying. It's a very small spring, very hard to replace. I've heard some people say that GM ignition springs on a truck works as a replacement, but I've never tried it. I've never looked. I'd just rather keep the original. But we'll get these out here. Come on here. Oh, there we go. Hopefully, I haven't been paying too much attention to the camera angle here. Hopefully you've been able to see what I've been doing. But yeah, so when we slide it out, these headphone jacks will bind. It's a fairly tight fit, so they will bind a little bit against the top of the casing here, as will these keys, the buttons there. So these are well-built machines. They are very robust. You can put a fair bit of pressure on them, but just be gentle, be consistent. You don't want to yank on them. That's when you start breaking things. You see, for the most part, you can get it about that far, keeping my thumb on that latch there. And then if we turn it up here, you can see it's starting to bind, and these keys will actually be starting to hit. So you just push down on the keys a little while keeping some consistent pressure. You just wiggle back and forth a little while pulling backwards, and then it'll jolt a little like that, and then it's free. These models will have the volume screwed into the front casing, so there will be cables attaching it. You don't have much room to work with there. So just when you initially pull it apart, be careful of that, and then just gently release that there, and you can see the spring left behind. It is, let me show you here, it is a very small spring. I don't know really where you'd be able to find reliable replacements for that if you did lose it. I know I'm on the hunt for one, and it's been a bit of a challenge. The screw in here is a flathead. It's a brass screw, actually, so reassembly can be a bit tricky when you don't have the ability to use a magnetized screwdriver to hold it. But that just comes out like that, and this won't lift, but it will slide backwards. The casing here, if I can show you, you can see it's a little notched in there. Can't see it too well, but it's notched there, so it just slides underneath. It doesn't actually drop in. We'll put this front casing to the side here. So now we're just down to the bare mechanism. This is what used to be or still is, I guess, the front of the unit. You have your play, fast forward, rewind, and stop buttons, your main flywheel, and you have your motor. These motors are used on a bunch of different models. I believe they're a later revision of the motor used in the L2. So the L2 motor, I actually have one here. It's the MNF 1600B. This, if I can show you, the cable's out of the way, MNF 1600F. I don't know what the differences are between the two revisions, but I don't think it's major. I think it's mostly just reliability. These motors were being used in Pressman recorders, up until 1979 when they made the L2, and I don't think they were meant for the kind of work that a Walkman is expected to do. I know this one here is seized. If you turn the flywheel, it'll spin all the cables as well. So I had to replace this one with a 1600F out of a WM-R2, which are good parts Walkmans to buy. Not many people want them. A lot of them are pretty beat up. You can find them pretty cheap, not working. And they have there's more to them than the standard WM2. Well, let me bring one in here. I have a disassembled one. You can see there's just more to it. So you just have a couple more places to grab certain parts if you need them. But I use these, for springs, flywheels, and motors, obviously. Even some wiring. It's just nice to have a Walkman on hand like this where, I've snapped one of these power cables before. It's easy to just desolder one from here, plop it on there, instead of having to go and find a cable and cut it to length, especially with how small some of these cables are. Even my, really skinny cables are massive in comparison. So now that we're in here, there's 4 screws to remove the main board. You're going to have one right up here, just above the fast forward button. One right over here, just below and to the right of the stop button. One right below the main flywheel on the right, and one right in front of the motor, just under here. And so we're going to take these out here. These screws are a little longer than the case screws, so it shouldn't be too hard to keep track of which one's which. But I do like to keep them separated just so I don't accidentally, I've done it before where I put the short screws on the inside and suddenly the long screws are sticking out a ways and I have to take the whole thing apart again. I do recommend using a parts tray if you can, but in a case like this, I have a clean workspace. I'm just keeping them up top. Just a quick disassembly and then reassembly. Shouldn't really matter. We can get that screw there. And then this final one here. Now, this Walkman will have less tape than you would see if you are opening one up for the first time that no one's been inside before. This guy's been opened up but a million times at this point, I think. So I'm missing a fair bit of tape. You can see some residue there. There was tape across the motor here. I just haven't got around to replacing it. It's not super important. It's mostly there just to keep things nice and tidy. But this will then lift off. You won't have a ton of space. If I flip it on its side here, you can only really lift it about that far before these cables and these motor cables start running into an issue. And then if you do need to lift this side more, let me grab my tweezers here. What's going to be stopping you will be this gray cable here. That's for the head of the Walkman itself. So there's a little spot that it snaps into. Oh, this one's already fallen out of it. Because I've taken it out one too many times. But that you can just ease up on and then you can pull that out and it gives you considerably more room to work with. These cables, you can get some more play in those as well. If I bring this up here, if this will focus. Come on here. There we go. So you can see in here along this panel here, there are actually channels that these cables run in. You can see that one right at the front there. You can bend those out and pull the cables out, but you do just want to be a little careful with it. I tend not to. They're a little annoying to put back in. But if you do need that extra room, if you do feel comfortable working with that extra space, it's very easy to pull those out. But for me, I've worked on Walkmans a little bit now. It doesn't bug me too much. But so you're going to be looking under here for the belts. Let me see if I can zoom in a little here, maybe make it a little easier. So you can see here, you're going to have the main flywheel here, which the belt will wrap all the way around, come off the back of it, up and around here, over there, and then back. There's only one belt in this unit, very easy to work on. This guy, to take it off, obviously if you have an older Walkman, chances are the belt will have either turned to goo or gone rock hard. I find these older models, I think the vulcanization material is different. So they tend to turn green and go very hard, and they're really annoying to clean out. So when you do get them, make sure you check inside the channels on the flywheel here, just to make sure there isn't like a bunch of gunk in there. If there is, the best way to deal with it usually, I found at least, is, a pair of these really, skinny tweezers. You just use one side and you go in sideways. The sharper the better. And you just kind of, cut it out almost. And then from there, thorough rubbing with a Q-tip soaked in isopropyl. But then once you have it off, you can see got your secondary flywheel there with its big disc at the bottom there to help provide mass. And then obviously just the motor. It's a very simple mechanism in terms of replacing a belt. I'm obviously just going to reuse the same one. I just replaced this the other day. But all you do, I find, usually the best. There's a couple ways you can go about it. I don't know if any one of them is really all that much better than the other. Sometimes I start with the motor, sometimes I start with the main flywheel. Really, a pair of tweezers is what you need. It just makes the whole process a lot easier. A lot better than trying to stick your fingers in there. But I usually just put it on the motor, spin it around that main flywheel, and then you can see it's not on that secondary. So you just go around, grab it with your tweezers, and just pull it around that secondary flywheel. Now with these, if you spin it one direction, I think it's this way, they tend to fall off, or maybe it's this way. Oh, not doing it today. Oh, there we go. Spin it one way, then back the other. They will fall off. So just be careful when you are spinning it, because you do want to check that everything's moving properly. Just check that you're not, pulling that belt off. And if it does fall off, don't worry, it's not a big deal. Just put it back on. Sorry, this isn't the best angle here. I'm just trying to pull this belt back up. Oh, making a whole mess of it here now, aren't I? Well, why don't we do that again, just to make sure I'm giving you a good angle on how to belt this properly. So you just take it here, pull it behind, if we can focus here, pull it behind that post, and then up and around, and then I like to take my tweezers, go behind this bundle of wires, grab it, and just pull it over the main flywheel here. And then obviously go back, grab, and pull across that secondary flywheel. That'll be the counter-rotating one that helps with wow and flutter. Just adds extra mass to the drive system. Really helps even it out. Now, I'm going to put this to the side for the moment, just because I'm going to bring my R2 back in here. It's easier to demonstrate on it. Because this one, I already have a bunch of cables missing from, and parts missing from, so I can easily flip it over like so. So this is what you'd be looking at more or less. Obviously this record button doesn't exist on the WM2 or the WM-5, but this is more or less the mechanism you'd be looking at, minus that and the tape counter there. This here is the center drive gear. This one has snapped. That is a common issue on the DD models. I don't know if it afflicts the WM2 and WM5 the same way. Obviously, it is an issue on the R2, seeing as this one has it. But I will be wanting to do a video on that hopefully soon. Right now, I only have one DD Walkman, and that one's had the gear replaced professionally already. But that shouldn't be too hard of a repair. I'd like to make a video showing everyone how to do it, because I don't think I've seen one on the internet yet. But yeah, so I tend to try not to mess with this section. It's just a lot of linkages really close together. And there's a lot of these really small like leaf spring switches. Let me see if I can show you one to the side here. Yeah, if you can see that leaf spring switch just right over here. They're really small, and trying to align them again properly can be really difficult. So I just try not to mess with them. But really, swapping a belt on these isn't very hard at all. Swapping capacitors, that's hopefully another video I'll make soon. There's not too many. The R2 here, I think you're 15, 20 capacitors, something like that. On the WM2, I think you're dealing with, it's something like 7 or 8 capacitors. It's not a lot. You open it up, get a good look at this side of the board, or there's pictures online as well, and guides online that just tell you the values of all the capacitors you need. You just order them from your closest electronics reseller, and buy some nice high quality ones, and just replace them from there. Again, hopefully I'll be doing a video on that. I am wanting to recap both my WM2 and WM5, so I should be able to show you that soon, hopefully. But now let's go over reassembly of these units. I'll zoom back out here a little bit, I guess. So with this, all you're going to do is just make sure the board is nestled back into place properly. Sometimes it can stick up a little. The main thing you want to look out for, there's that notch there on the side of the power input. That's a good way to line everything up. And one thing you do want to make sure is that this bundle of cables will have 2 posts that is designed to sit between, and that's just there so that it doesn't get into your motor and cause any issues with that. Or into the flywheel, rather, I should say. And yeah, usually the board will just kind of sit up a little. You don't need to be sitting fully properly before you start screwing it back in. Oh, almost went and grabbed the wrong screws there myself. So we just grab these screws, and again, just 4 screws. Go back in. Doesn't really matter what order you put them in. Are we lined up here? Oh, apparently not. Let's see. There we go. Yeah, these units really are easy to work on. I know a lot of people in the community are really worried to work on a Walkman, open it up. I think electronics are, considered very dangerous by a lot of people, which, is a good thing. You don't want to be opening up electronics you don't understand. But with small little handheld devices like this, especially of this vintage, I mean, this is not a very complex system at all. It's, there's ICs on it, but they're mostly just, like little transistor packs, essentially. They're nothing, there's no logic happening in them beyond the most basic sense. Especially, the models that were adapted from the earlier Pressmans. Stuff like the TPS-L2, the WM1, the WM4, and the F1. They're really simple mechanisms. They're not meant to be complex. They're meant to just record some audio onto a tape, at least originally. They're really easy to work on. This still is, from the days when your standard consumer was, expected to be able to do a repair. Or even if you did take it to the Sony rep, the Sony tech, it wasn't exactly, these were meant to be serviceable. This was a high quality product that you bought and you repaired. It's not like the electronics of today. They're meant to be repaired, and they should be repaired. And they are, I think at least, great introductory tools, just to get, the basics of electronics repair in here. We're just gonna put this screw back in. You can see here, yeah, it's a little difficult to get this screw in here. If you have, one of those brass screwdrivers, the flatheads that separate apart at the tip, I'd use it for that, but I don't. So just my fingers and a bit of trial and error. Now you do want to fit the spring inside the door here, or inside the latch here. And then what I like to do is once you have that in there, slide it up against it, and you won't really be able to tell on video, I don't think, but you can kind of see there, yeah, it isn't lined up. So that is, the spring is still fully extended. Oh, the spring's flipped up here on me. Let me try that again. So you drop it in, just in that tray like that. and then you can flip it up. And then I like to take my tweezers, push them like this, and then it's a little difficult to show on camera, but you just push in and then pull back just towards the battery compartment, just so it compresses, and you can fit it behind the latch. Now when you're wanting to put it in, again, hold pressure down on that latch there, and you're going to want to slide, down like this to slide the headphone jacks into place. And then once those are starting to locate, oh, why aren't we going together here? Once those start to locate here, oh, come on, what's our issue? There we go. Oh, not going together so smoothly today. Of course, the one time I need to record it. There we go. So you just slide in into like that and then push forward and then lower. Just kind of at the same time there. Make sure you're not pinching any cables around back or on the sides. That's what I think I'm doing here. Again, that's part of why you want that tape in there, just to help prevent that. I try to replace the tape, but usually the adhesive's gone, and that kind of tape I don't typically keep on hand. But then you can just kind of wiggle it in from there. You may want to make sure that your tape type selector stays in the same position as you do this. And yeah, you can kind of start to see our problem here. Just these buttons are starting to bind on the front post. And then again, just very gentle, putting it back together. It's okay if it takes a few minutes. Just be gentle, push in all directions, make sure you're not binding on anything, making sure you're not crushing anything. Firm but gentle. So yeah, there we go. We weren't fully in there. Now we're in, it just pops right down. And then we can put those 4 screws back in. And again, these machines aren't hard to work on at all. They are meant to be taken apart. And I very much suggest that you do so. Taking them apart is a lot of fun. I apologize if I'm not getting the best camera angles here. I'm trying to make everything clear, but it's also my first time, I think, recording myself doing this. I also hope the video turns out okay. I was going to record this on my actual camera, but I could not get the lighting to work, so we're recording it on my phone. So it should be 4K video at 30 FPS, but it's a budget Samsung. I don't know how much I trust that sensor to really be 4K, at least proper 4K quality. And then just the last screw there. And then typically you do this before you put those screws in, but just double check that switch moves back and forth. Focus back there. And then for the lid, to put that back in, you're just going to want to slide these hinges in first. So they'll slot between this main hinge assembly here and this outer piece there. So you just slide it in like so, and then you can even push down on the latch just to help keep it in place. And then again, if I can get the screw on the end of my screwdriver here, that'd be nice. There we go. You just screw that in there. Snug it up. Nothing on here needs to be particularly tight. Small screws, but just until it snugs, or is snug. And one thing I did forget to mention is a lot of times when you will get these Walkmans, they will have a crackly volume knob. So I use I think it's MotoMaster, MotoMaster electrical contact cleaner. I know, a lot of people talk about deoxit. Tecmone talks a lot about deoxit. But anything contact cleaner, deoxidizer, anything like that works. It doesn't really matter, but essentially when you have this apart, you can try to spray it in here if you want. That will work for the most part. But if you are already disassembling this, Once you take this out, just spray it into the underneath of the volume knob and just, give it a full few rotations. That should be good. But yeah, that more or less concludes this look at the WM-5. Hopefully I'll be bringing out some videos on some other Walkmans soon. I want to just give people a good rundown on how to do basic repairs on some of the more popular models. I haven't seen too many good videos on it. Some of them are really high production value but are more entertainment, and some of them are just kind of there to document the process more so than show. So hopefully this video wasn't too bad of quality. I'll hopefully get a bit better with camera angles and keeping everything in focus and in frame. But hopefully that gives you some help if you're wondering on how to replace the belts. And hopefully I'll be giving you some more information on how to do some other repairs if you need to in the future as well. But thank you for watching. Have a good one.